Hi, I'm Richard from Drive Green, and today we're going to be spending some time with the Volkswagen e-Golf. The e-Golf was Volkswagen's signature electric car for many years, and today I'm going to share the benefit of my experience with it and hopefully help you decide whether it might be the right electric car for you. The Volkswagen Golf is a car that has defined the hatchback segment ever since its initial launch back in the 1970s, and it has since become the third best-selling car of all time. The e-Golf was launched in 2014 with a 26 kilowatt-hour battery, giving it a competitive 80 to 90 mile range depending on your driving style and the time of year. Volkswagen were quite lacklustre in their attempts to sell and market this first generation of e-Golf. As a result, they didn't sell very many, and as a consequence of that, if you're trying to find one in the used market, they do tend to attract quite a price premium if you're lucky enough to find one. Despite being a lovely car, it just didn't touch the sides in sales terms compared to the mighty Nissan Leaf, which was its main competitor back in those early days. In 2017, Volkswagen released a newer upgraded version of the car, which is still exactly the same model you can get today in 2021. This new model sported a bigger 36 kilowatt-hour battery that gave a car a much more respectable 120 to 130 miles of range, again depending on your driving style and the time of year. This range was way ahead of its competition back in 2017, however now over 3 years on, it is lower than many of its newer competitors, which generally offer 140 miles or more. However, as we know, range isn't everything, and at 100 to 120, 130 miles worth of driving range, the e-Golf is more than adequate for very many people in terms of their daily driving requirement. Despite having a lower range than many of its competitors, the e-Golf was still in the top 10 best-selling EVs in 2020, so it is still proving to be a really popular electric car. The Golf is a design classic, familiar and incredibly popular. It's stylish, completely unoffensive. It's undoubtedly a very nice looking car. I don't think anyone could ever say that this is an ugly car or anything less than an attractive car. This is partly why I think the e-Golf remains so popular. It's the familiarity and likability of its looks. Low and sleek, without an unpleasant line or an unpleasing angle. It's a Golf, but electric. I have found that the e-Golf appeals the most to previous Golf owners, who love the car and have an appreciation for the Volkswagen brand. They've had a great experience with the traditional Golf, and now they're switching to an electric car. The e-Golf is the obvious, familiar and comforting choice. The Golf is a really nice, perfectly practical car in a day-to-day usability sense. It's not too big, it's not too small, it's that perfect sort of everyman car size, and I think that's part of the beauty of its design. Whilst it isn't big enough to perhaps be the family holiday car, it can take a bike rack and a roof box, so it does remain quite versatile. The boot space is also where a car is judged on its practicality, and in line with the rest of the car, it has a medium-sized boot that's very usable, with extra storage underneath, a pull-through hatch, as well as split folding seats. Again, the time-perfected design of the Golf wins over in a practical sense. Even though you can't possibly consider it to be a large family car, it's just so perfectly medium. That time-perfected design is also apparent as soon as you get into the e-Golf. It's very familiar, it's very comfy, everything's in the right place, it's obviously very well made. It's another big part of its appeal to existing Golf lovers. Very, very high quality materials used in the car. You can tell how well it's put together. It's very, very nicely finished. It really is a premium finished car without being flashy. Leather was also available, however the bulk of these cars all have this sort of nice dark grey fabric interior. The seats are very comfy, and like the rest of the car, you know, very, very well made, and they come even with adjustable lumbar support. Spec-wise, the e-Golf is common of most German cars in that it's available in a standard sort of basic spec onto which you can add additional options. That's not to say by any means that this is a poorly equipped car in its standard spec. I mean, quite the opposite. It's got a lot of spec on it, and I would say it's probably only some heated seats away from being considered a truly premiumly spec'd car. It has an elegant, easy-to-use infotainment system, an inbuilt sat-nav, manoeuvring sensors all round, an auto preconditioning function to pre-warm the car for you in winter, an electronic handbrake, an adaptive cruise control. It even has an auto hold function, which just like a Tesla, you can set to automatically apply the handbrake when you're stationary and you touch the foot brake, which is a really nice touch. In the standard spec, the e-Golf comes with an old school analog display and a physical ignition key, which I must admit does feel a bit like a trip back in time compared to most other EVs that I can think of. However, both are available as upgrade options, and like I say, I think with some heated seats and a push button start, the e-Golf will have all the same feel of a nice premium model. Due to the need to maintain economies of scale, due to the relatively low production numbers of the e-Golf, Volkswagen did produce a large number of cars to a standard sort of similar spec. Whilst it is possible to spec whatever you want onto the car when you're buying one from new, you do tend to find that the best finance deals are available on a fixed sort of standard spec vehicle. As a result of which, not only adding additional options will increase the cost of your finance deal, perhaps disproportionately, it can also greatly increase lead time on your car. As a result, lots of people went for the easiest option, the cheapest option, and just chose the standard spec models. Consequently, choice within the used market is fairly limited, and most cars tend to be quite similar. Other options you might choose to add to your e-Golf would be leather, heated seats, you have a heated windscreen, reversing camera. You can get a nice, sort of bigger, more snazzy media center, a digital dash display. You can have driver assist, lane assist, electric adjustable seats, keyless start, as well as an upgraded sound system. If you're looking to buy a used e-Golf, please try not to set your heart too much on having lots of spec upgrades, as you will, either find yourself quite disappointed because you're unable to find the car, or alternatively you're going to end up paying an absolute price premium for what is fundamentally a really rare car. There is another very important upgrade that's missing from the standard spec and on a lot of the cars you'll find out there, and that's the heat pump heating system. Now, a heat pump is a super efficient heating system which you often see in electric cars because of its efficiency. It helps with all-important winter range. It can reduce your winter range loss by about 50% or even more. How critical this is to you will depend, of course, on your driving patterns in the winter months. If you're going to be doing quite a lot of long-distance driving, pushing the limits of the range of the car, in the winter on the coldest of winter days, then I would say the heat pump is probably the single most important item to spec on your car. One thing I do find quite disappointing with the e-Golf is its winter range, which I find sort of fairly disappointing compared to a lot of EVs. I think with sort of fairly aggressive driving and on the coldest winter days, you're probably looking at getting more like around about 90 miles worth of range out of a car, which during the summer months, I would say you're getting sort of 120, 130, or even 140 miles. Like all EVs, deciding what you need the car to do in terms of range is the most important thing to determine, as range isn't necessarily everything, and if 90 miles in winter and 120 to 130 miles in summer is more than sufficient for your needs, then the Golf is still a great option for you. Where the e-Golf really excels is in its drive. It's sublimely good, it handles so well. I think it's probably got to be the best handling EV at this level I can think of. Obviously Volkswagen invented the hot hatch back 45 years ago with the Golf GTI, and I think you can still sense a bit of that dynamic DNA in the e-Golf even now. It just handles and performs brilliantly. The Golf by design, handles great, corners really well, but you add on to that the fact that the weight in the e-Golf rests in its batteries, which are centred to the car and low down. You've got a really low centre of gravity, and the results are incredible. I can't think of a car that corners as well as the e-Golf. It also has some multiple adjustable Regen braking settings, so you can alter the extent to which the car decelerates as you lift your foot off the throttle pedal. This is great, and it means that most of the time you'll be driving in an effortless sort of one-pedal driving style. Although the e-Golf perhaps doesn't have the biggest driving range, it's still a perfectly capable long-distance driver. I mean, to be honest, The range isn't too bad to begin with, especially when you compare it to early EVs. And if you are driving outside the limits of the range of the car, then you just need to schedule a charging stop at a rapid charger at somewhere like the motorway services. A 30-minute stop at a motorway rapid charge will deliver about 80 miles worth of range back into the car. And you know, if you're not doing these long distance drives that often, it really isn't that much of a hardship, and it certainly isn't something that isn't more than made up for by all the other positive features and the drive of the e-Golf. The e-Golf really is a truly lovely car to drive, and it's definitely built to a very high standard. Whilst it perhaps doesn't have the longest range, if you don't need to regularly drive more than 120 miles, or perhaps 90 miles in a worst case winter scenario, then the e-Golf may still work for you. If you like the Volkswagen brand and the familiarity and practicality and the almost universal likability of the traditional Golf, then you're going to love the e-Golf, and it may well be just the right electric car for you. I hope this video has been useful in helping you to learn a little bit more about the Volkswagen e-Golf. Please do get in touch if you have any further questions or would like to arrange a test drive, and also do check out our other e-Golf videos, and thank you ever so much for watching.